Hey there, I just wanted to take a second to say thank you so much for watching this episode of The Shepherd Station. If you feel this has added some value to your life, it would mean so much to us if you would share this episode with someone else. It helps us so much when you do that. It would go a long way in supporting our mission to help men become better fathers, husbands, and leaders. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and give us a like. If you're listening to us through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen to podcasts, follow us, leave us a review, and let us know how we're doing. We want to hear from you. All right, that's all I've got. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Shepherd Station. We are at 24 East Church Street in Headland, Alabama. We're on the square. This is the Stockyard. Come by and see us. We have great food, great coffee, great place to hang out. As always, if you can't hang out with us, go see Zach and Destiny at Mural City in downtown Dothan. That's where we get all our coffee. They're roasted in-house. Great place to go sit and hang out. Go by and see them, good people. Again, as always, with me today is Andy Hughes to my right. Look at that big old mug. And Thomas Brown to my left. We have a really good guest in here with us today. Terry Harris, retired U.S. Army. Tell them what all you did. I know what you did, but tell them what all you did. It was 5th Group Special Forces.
Sure, keep going.
160th Special Operations.
Yep.
And you were a Chinook pilot, right?
Yep.
You fly little birds too?
For a little while.
For a little while.
That's what I thought.
And has one of the most glorious mustaches I've ever seen. I did have to throw that in there.
It's legendary.
Yeah, a friend of mine and I were the first two W-1s that the regiment hired because they didn't like normal Army Chinook pilots. So they hired him and I, who had prior soft background.
They want somebody that had been in the back of a Chinook to get in the front of the Chinook.
Yeah, because that way we wouldn't have any fear anyways.
Right.
Because
What is that? I always heard about a Chinook. If you get in the back of one and there's no hydraulic oil in the floor, don't fly in it. Is that it?
not so bad. Maybe in the A's or B's or C's, but the D's, the E's, F's, and G's.
If it wasn't held together by 100-mile-an-hour tape and leaking somewhere, then you probably didn't want to get in it. That's what I heard. So. Uh-oh.
Hang on. Sorry, I don't know what just happened.
Everybody, we're having a little bit of technical
Okay,
difficulty.
now you're on.
All right, it sounds like we're
My
back.
fault.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah.
So
No, they're not bad.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up at, Terry? Where were you born and raised at?
So I grew up in Michigan in a little bitty town up in the Thumb area.
The thumb area.
Yeah, in Michigan, you know,
So up in
looks like a
northern-
mitt.
North of Michigan.
It does. It looks like a mitten.
Yeah, I guess that's the first time I've ever heard that.
So, you know, everybody has their designation of where they're from within their state and how to describe it.
Right.
So everybody realizes, well, Michigan forms a mitt. The main lower peninsula does, whereas the upper peninsula kind of looks like a deer running.
Oh, okay. So you're from the thumb area.
From the Thumb area. Grew up in a little town. It had one traffic light. In fact, Headland's bigger than the town I grew up in.
Wow. Yeah. That's
Grew up on a farm, raising cash crops, and worked for a dairy farmer, milking. I don't know. I think we milked 230 head a day.
Good grief. What'd you do for hobbies and everything when you were growing up?
Fishing, trapping.
I knew you fished because you still love to fish.
Oh, I still do.
Are you still tournament fishing?
Oh yeah, I just got beat bad the other day.
Where'd you go?
We were up on. Me and a friend of mine were up on Jordan. We fished the Alabama Bass Trail. Mm-hmm. So they have 2 divisions. Actually, she's got Kay Donaldson's the one that runs it, and she started 10 years ago. So she started, she had a north and south, and now she's got a top 100 for it. So they do tournament fishes, a tournament trail, and we have the 2 divisions fish 5 tournaments, team tournaments.
So when are you going to start getting sponsored and going professional and all that?
You want to retire into a professional bass master?
Bass master.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if that I'm politically correct enough.
well, you got
Terry, I might have to agree with that.
yeah. Well, you got beat, but there's no bad day fishing, right?
Some days.
Yeah.
When you don't get a bite, that's a bad day.
They're all good. They're all good. Just some days are better than others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So, what inspired you to go into the military? Or what age did you go in the military? Did you go in right out of high school? Or
Actually, I left the day after my birthday. So I joined in the military prior to getting out of high school. It's in a delayed entry program. And I don't know. I mean, it was one of those, it's like I thought about being a vet, and that was, I think at that time, another 8 or 12 years of school and another $100,000.
right?
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I don't have that kind of money. I like being outside, so sure, why not? I think that's probably about the best answer I have for that.
When you graduated, basically, did you know when you went in that you wanted to be in SF?
Yeah, actually, I tried to, but I was too dumb.
Couldn't make the right ASVAB score.
I don't really know what to say to that. So.
All right.
I couldn't make the right ASVAB score, so I didn't score high enough that I could go into the, what they called at that time, I think the Beret program, to go straight into SF.
Yeah.
So then I had to go be a dumb grunt.
How long were you a dumb grunt?
Let's see, 5 years.
Okay.
And multiple attempts, as I tell my students now, they're like, when we're teaching class, I'm like, hey, I'm the dumbest one in the room. And they start laughing. I'm like, oh, no. I am. You know, I had to go to what they called a BSEP, which is a basic education program the military had like 5 times to raise my GT score high enough so that I could go and get into SF.
You know, that's called persistence. So
Yeah, I was about to say that's determination.
You could have served out your primary 4-year enlistment and said, screw this, I'm just gonna go out and get a job now since I can't get what I want. But you were persistent and you kept after it.
Yeah, but that life's pretty easy.
No.
When you say pretty easy,
It is easy. It beat being up at dark 30 milking cows every day.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
7 days a week.
a little more excitement than milking cows 7 days a week.
That's like my daddy and one of his brothers went into the Army on the buddy plan back in 1954.
Right.
And my dad said when they went, because he come from a family of 11 and they farmed, like plowing mules and, working hard every single day. He said, when we went in the Army, he said, it was a break, man. It was like a vacation.
It's easy.
They give me new clothes to wear,
Oh, my gosh.
I actually had shoes and,
wow.
They fed us 3 good times a day and we got to run and do stuff. And they were already in great shape from plowing mules and working on the farm all day long. He said, the Army was a vacation to us.
Oh, my
It
God.
is. People don't get it.
Yeah.
It was.
So when you, all right, so that everybody listening understands the process. There's a selection process to go to Special Forces.
No, not when I went.
Right.
Okay.
So when I went to
to
Special Forces, it was just a matter of turning in a 4187.
Okay.
So I turned in a 4187 and was accepted. So then I went down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
So were you accepted to the Q course at that time? Or is it, there's like a selection now and then you get to go to the Q course, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we went straight to the Q course. So basically the old John Wayne movie, they'll test 100,
Yeah.
but 3 will win.
Yeah.
Was
Fighting soldiers.
what was a fairly true statement back in those days, because we showed up at the theater at Bragg, and I think there was 500 plus people for my class. And as we go through those, a lot of time at that point in the Army, people were applying to things because it got them out of a duty station, because the Army wasn't PCSing people regularly. So people would get tired of places. They put a 4187, and by going to the Q course or Special Forces training, that got you out of
South Korea.
Sure.
Or something.
Got you out of wherever you were at and set up for worldwide assignments. So people would just up and quit right then, that quick. And they would go, now they're back open to worldwide assignment. So we finished that, and then you had to do a PT test and a swim test. Well, obviously there's a standard for PT testing. It was just push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. But their idea of push-ups, the guy put his hand flat on the floor, and if your chest didn't touch it, it didn't count.
Right.
Strict.
Even though that's not what the PT manual said it was.
What
the
the standard
standard
is,
was,
yeah.
but
For SF, it was.
well, just for
Make it up as they go.
basically to eliminate those that didn't want to play.
Right.
Right.
So we finished that, And I think when we went to McCall, we had a grand total of about 300 out of 500. So we're already down almost what?
200.
200.
About a third of what we had started with. So the next big hassle or trial was what they call the Star Nav. And it's dependent on your ability to navigate minimum 26 kilometers, maximum unlimited. So you have to find basically 5 points, maybe 6, creates a star. So that's nicknamed the Star.
Stars now, yeah.
So by the time we finished that, and in that case, when we would do those tests or do that nav course, you had a prescribed packing list. If you did not have every single item on the packing list, you were a no-go, no matter if you completed the course in timeline or not. And there's a timeline on it. It started at 2 a.m. and finished at noon. I think you had basically 8 hours.
So you're following a map?
Sure.
Where okay.
You had a map, you had a protractor. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You had a map, protractor, compass, all those things, all of the gear you're supposed to carry, and then you would have a layout prior to starting, and then you had a layout once you arrived. And as you go to those points, if you were at the wrong point, the guy would be like, sorry, you're not on my list. Or as you come to a point, you would still have to find it. And it wasn't like, you know, I got to find this broad open square. I had to find a small chem light, and some of the people were nice and fun, and
Some of them were not.
it would stick. You know, it's tied to a U-shaped picket, and on the backside. So if you didn't hit it right, you wouldn't see very much light because you only had the little end open, and it was tucked in the corner in the pocket of the U-shaped picket, so you couldn't see it. And he would read your coordinates off if you were correct. He would read off to your next location.
How much room for error on your coordinates did they give you? I mean, I would assume it's minimal.
No, actually, because out there it was quite large.
But within a few yards.
But yeah, if you weren't within a few yards, you weren't necessarily going to find them.
Right.
Because he's not sitting there with all the lights on and everything.
Right. See, yeah, I got you.
You know, because I went back later on after I retired and did the same thing too, into the new program. So once we finished this portion, out of that 300 and some, there was 94 of us that passed the first time.
Out of 500.
Yeah, so
Out of 300.
Out of 300.
So that's another 2/3.
Wow.
What year was this, Terry?
That was in January of '88. And Bragg actually had a snowstorm. There was a foot of snow on the ground when we jumped into Rhine Luzon.
That was fun, wasn't it? That was a good time.
But yeah, so we get there and 94 of us finished. And I actually thought by the time I got to my first point, I had to walk through, as everybody calls it, Bones Fork. And they're like, oh, you know, Bone Fork, basically it's a big swamp. And you can't
now,
walk
I'm just
on
curious,
roads.
why are they calling it Bones Fork?
Because that's the name of the creek.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's dinosaur land.
I
It's
gotcha.
full of buckbrush, tangles, knee stumps,
Oh, okay.
swampy, nothing. Just swamp bottom.
You had to
And
go
I
through all
started
that.
my starting point was on the south side of that, and I had to go cross that or walk multiple kilometers out of my way to go around it. And I've always been a believer of straightest distance.
Yeah.
I can, Thomas. You gotta understand. Having worked with Terry, I can hear him the whole time doing it.
Yeah.
Literally hear Terry in my head right now, just grumbling the whole time.
You know, I was like, this ain't going to be that bad. It's just a creek. We can get across that.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me, the beavers had dammed it up, so now it's not really a creek. I'm like hopping from little clump to clump as I go along, and I slip and fall in and get my feet wet. I'm like, not that big a deal. It's no different than being in Ranger School when I was down at Ranger School walking through the swamps down there.
So you went to Ranger School before you went to the Q Corps?
Yeah.
That was a plus, I'm sure. It was good for you.
Yeah.
6 1, half dozen the other. I was in the infantry as a scout, too, so
I remember you telling me that. I forgot that.
I was a motorcycle scout in the infantry.
That's right. You were a motorcycle scout.
Used to ride with, as we call them, old full-face 5s, PVS 5 night vision goggles
So you rode the bike with the night vision goggles on.
at night with no lights.
How do you do that? That's because you lose in night vision. You lose your depth perception.
Andy, have you ever ridden in a truck or a car with Terry?
Yeah.
Okay, I can imagine riding on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So
With night vision goggles on. That sounds like Tom Clancy stuff right there. Like straight up, just secret agent.
that's before he went to Special Forces too.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It was already in him.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so we used to ride with full-face 5s. And the full-face 5s are literally take a pair of dive goggles, dive mask, and put on your face, and then black them out. And
Yeah,
drive
they-
around out here in the streets.
Yeah,
Yeah, there weren't the resolution in there was not probably all that
No.
great. Yeah.
not at that time.
Not at that time.
Not in the early 80s.
Yeah. I can imagine just based on what technology was like back then.
Once you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's a tree. That's about all you can see. So,
So, finishing up at the Q course, we finished, like I said, I slipped off into there and got wet. I'm like, okay, screw this. I'm just going to walk through the water and walk through, got across where I'm going. And it took me a lot longer than I planned on because of how much walking through all that garbage. Get to my first point, the guy reads me the coordinates.
And you got a ruck on and everything else
Oh,
too.
yeah.
You're not just
the ruck is, I think it's about 80 pounds.
and you have to have that.
You have
Yeah,
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's all my kit that we went to the field with, and it's
Well,
about
you're
80
supposed to have a packing list, right, of things. And so you've got to have.
that's
Okay.
right.
So again, that grumbling that I was telling you I heard. There you go.
So I get to my first point, and the instructor reads off the coordinates that we're at, or reads me the my new point. So by the time I get there, my pants, because it's cold, have frozen. So I'm like,
what was the temperature? I know you said it was snowing, but
Oh,
there was
that's
snow
right.
on
Yeah,
the
you dropped
ground,
into a
but
foot of
no-
snow.
Well, that was at the beginning when we first went in. There wasn't snow on the ground now, but
Oh,
it was
okay.
still, cold enough to freeze while I'm walking.
fun.
So I sit down, take all my gear off, pull all my wet junk out, put my new dry boots on. I'm like, resign myself. Well, I guess I'm going to do this again tomorrow.
One day
Sounds
at a time.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go. Got dried off, so I spent an extra 30 minutes getting warmed up and dried off and put new gear on. And then headed out and managed to complete it with about 30 minutes left.
Really?
Yeah.
So you didn't have to do it the next day.
Nope, I didn't. Good thing, because my feet were about shot. That was where I got introduced to the,
Swamp.
tetrabenzene,
Oh, okay.
because I had blisters. So basically, it glues your foot back together, glues your skin back to your skin.
After everything starts peeling off. Yeah.
Like super glue.
Well, a
Little
little
bit-
more special.
little more special.
Let's say it'll make you bend bars
Oh, okay.
because it hurts that bad. Because it glues that blister back to the skin.
Fun stuff.
But yeah, we managed to finish that, and then ended up. I was supposed to stay at Bragg, and I went and talked to the sergeant major. I was like, "Hey, I'd rather go back to Campbell." He's like, "Okay, I got plenty of guys that want to stay at Bragg. Works great." So I ended up back at Campbell in 5th group.
Question real quick, as far as it goes, and this was in 88, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So how many groups were there in 88? You had,
Well, you had 1st, 10th, 7th, and 5th.
did you get, and was it typical and standard for you to be able to choose where you wanted to go?
Partially.
Okay.
I mean, they did do some of their own based upon your
Needs of the Army.
background. Not so much.
Needs of SF.
Not so much needs of SF, but your background. So if you were a Spanish speaker, you would end up in 7th. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. But the other ones, not so much. Now, if you had, for some reason, something in your background that would allow you to speak an Asian language, then you may end up in 1st group.
First group.
But as a general rule, it wasn't.
5th group was Middle East, right?
Fifth group was desert.
Desert. All right. Yeah.
Middle desert.
Yeah.
Got to go to all the deserts of the world, except for a couple. But.
Third group got the African.
Well,
ones,
third
right?
group didn't exist yet.
Really?
So third group didn't exist. And you guys talk about selection and assessment that everybody's talking about. Well, back to those, the second day after the testing, I think there was another 20 people passed the first test, or the second go-no-go on the land nav. So there's a total, by the end of the 2 days of training on that, there was a total of like 120, 130 of us that had passed land nav. Everybody else got to do the brand new practice development selection assessment.
Okay.
So
Brand
that's,
new.
yeah.
This is a test run on what they got now.
Yes. So that was the origins. It's all the people that failed our course became the new test bed for the selection and assessment.
Oh, okay. So even though they failed out, they weren't necessarily done at that point.
No, they weren't necessarily done at that point. Because again, you know, you could have twisted something, you could have gotten medically hurt or whatever, but not real hard.
Interesting.
I mean, walking through the middle of the night, carrying a bunch of garbage.
Yeah. Makes sense.
How many people ended up graduating your Q course? Your class?
I don't remember, because you now start to get recycles pulled back in from all over.
Right.
So then in my time period, that was phase one. So you went to phase one, which was just basic patrolling, navigations, and all those basic things. Then you went from there, you went to phase two, which was your MOS training. So I went and became a engineer, demolitions and expert. So,
Now, at one point, you went to sniper school too, didn't
well, I've been to sniper school multiple times,
you? Okay.
but not the soft sniper school. I went to, when I was in the infantry, I went to the sniper school at Campbell ran, which is the marksmanship training. So I went to that when I was in the scouts.
So let's move to a few things. Just you graduate from, or you get your long tab. You're now SF. One of the stories that I wanted to talk about, and you and I have kind of discussed a few things.
I just realized SF is Special Forces.
Thomas, it's okay, man.
I just realized that. I'm sorry. I'm a civilian. None of this is all new to me.
Yes, SF.
So
It's
SF
just
is
another day
Special
at the
Forces.
office.
I
Yes,
just
Special
got it. I'm like,
It's
that
just another day.
makes
at the
so
office.
much more sense now. Got it. For
Right.
everybody that's in my shoes, there you go.
There you
Special
go.
Forces. That's
So going back to you and I had a discussion years back. You did some time. Go back to the infamous Black Hawk Down incident.
Okay.
And you had done some
Mogadishu,
time.
93.
Mogadishu, 93. You were in SF at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give a little? Now you weren't there for the actual incident, but you were there right before it, right?
I was there until the last 2 weeks of September. We left, I think.
And October 3rd was
So October 3rd was like a between 2 weeks, I think, after that incident. So we got there in February, and we'd sent some people over in Christmas time to work when they did their initial one. And prior to that, when I was in Desert Storm in December of '90, they called us about going in and evacuating the embassy in the Somalia, in Mogadishu. But then, based upon the time it would take and the assets we would need to correlate, the Navy had a MEU and sent a SEAL team in to go do that. That was riding on that MEU. So we didn't go do that.
Okay.
But we ended up there in, what's this, 93, February of 93.
Can you talk about some of the things that what were your tasks over there?
So we were tasked with working with the UN. So I actually ended
How
up
was
working.
that?
And our task was to go out and kind of do site surveys and photograph and gather info to pass back to the UN as to who was who and where these who's were and all those kinds of things.
you're doing threat assessments.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can call it that. Now, the target that y'all were going for, I mean, it was Ferrara Deed, right?
We were not.
No,
directly.
you weren't, not directly, but that was the whole mission set, was going after Muhammad Ferrara Deed, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Indirectly, yes, because he was the controller of Mogadishu.
I have to step away for just a second. I got a phone call.
They were there were several warlords, but he was
Right.
the most powerful.
He was the one in that area.
Yeah.
And initially, how does that all run down through there? So initially when we went in there, he was good with it because his son, I believe, it was his son, came in with the Marines. So they kind of allowed him to do that. And understanding how those warlords work, they control their area just like any modern territory, and everything comes through them. And to include when you start to get into, as I call them, the granola heads, bringing all their help and whatnot, it goes to him, and then he sells it to the populace after the fact.
Yeah. So he's maintaining control of the populace through control of the food.
Yes,
That's
and
good.
medical and whatever else.
Yeah.
So we would be running around doing different assessments, and you would run into some of these people, and some of them are good, and some of them not so good. Some of them you got to give credit to because he's standing there by himself and looks them in the face and says, "No, this is what we contracted. This is what you're going to do." Others caved.
Wow.
So, I mean, it just depended. So we were just doing those assessments on all that stuff and passing that info, passing that intel back to the UN.
Was there any shots fired during the time you were over there?
Oh, yeah.
I know there's small skirmishes all the time.
All the time, you would see red or green tracers. You'd see them going back and forth. You'd see rockets getting launched or whatever, or all that stuff bouncing back and around. And you would still, initially when we were first there, it was pretty much, you would go downtown in Mogadishu and there's crowds of people. I mean, bumper to bumper, wall to wall people, and the different people out selling their wares and making a living.
Just with all this going on.
Oh, yeah, because it all kind of goes on in the background.
Yeah.
Well, and I've always kind of wondered if how much of a threat, I don't want to say threat, but I guess compared to the U.S. military, you guys going in there, what was it, were you like, this is, obviously you thought, there's always the chance that you could die, but with those things going on, were they really adept at actually, what was the level of capability of actually being a real threat to you guys?
So again, you go by, you ask that question, but the simplest answer is anybody who lives under that regime or that style of thought becomes quite adept at combat. Don't care who they are.
And it's hard to fight someone in their own territory where they grew up and they know everything. The intel network is theirs. The terrain is theirs, and then you've got to try to overcome what they already have.
And again, when we went in, we weren't there to overcome anything. We were there to, because there's only 2 teams with us in our company, B team as we call them, that were there. So there's only, any time we were riding around, there would only be, 4 to 8 of us. If that many as we're riding around through these streets, and it's bumper to bumper. Or wall to wall. You couldn't really just drive like you drive through Dothan. So think of...
Your alert level's pretty high at that point, I would think.
Yeah, and again, at that time period, you've seen how the regular Army, when they were there, they rolled all closed in, and we didn't. We would roll setting out with guns pointed out, facing out of the vehicle, and like, okay.
Ready. Yeah.
Do you really want to play this game?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And some would come by. It's like one day we were coming from somewhere, me and our team medic were coming from somewhere, and some little kid snatched my glasses off my face. Sunglasses.
In the middle of able to get that close to you?
Literally.
You stopped in traffic, right?
We're stopped with pedestrians all around us. So think of...
Were you decked out though? You had like a rifle and were you...
No, because we hadn't really gotten super. We weren't at that stage again.
Oh, okay.
So it had kind of calmed. So when we got there, it was relatively calm until about June.
Oh, okay.
So this is between that February.
So he felt comfortable coming up to you to be able to.
Well, yeah. I mean,
good.
literally. So if you think of, I'm trying to think here, Foster Fest, how crowded the streets are, and drive a vehicle down through there.
Right.
So you got people just wall to wall. So the little kids were notorious thieves. So he snatched him, and I jumped out of the vehicle and chased him down. Through a bunch of shanties.
Oh my gosh!
Give me my Oakley.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Yeah, right,
Terry
yeah.
wanted his Oakleys.
Yeah.
Done.
It wasn't
PX.
Oakleys, though, because they were just, they were regular old Ray-Bans.
Issue.
Ray-Bans.
Yeah. So I chased him down through the back streets in little shanties and snatched him up and started patting him down where my glasses were. And then it clicks in my head. I'm like, oh, shit, I'm way off.
Yeah.
I'm way out of the main street here.
Terry took a side quest.
I did not think this through.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we freaking kind of go back there and jump back in. There's a lost pair of sunglasses. And
Lesson learned.
Gosh,
Right?
that's funny.
so
Story here is don't let anybody steal your sunglasses.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking, because you think Black Hawk Down and everything that happened with that prior, and the story that he shared, the chaplain, I think you sent me. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right
Jeff
now.
Struker.
Yeah, that he's driving through the streets and like there's just fire, everywhere, and
now
Rooftops
realize
also.
yeah,
that this has been several months later.
yeah,
Yeah.
So prior to that, so June is when all this starts to get sketchy again.
right.
So in June, they decide that a deed's been moving guns and whatnot. They want to go check all of his compounds. So we go check out, we split up with all the different organizations. So it's me and I think the team sergeant, went with the Pakistanis to check some of the deed's compounds out of town, whereas several of the other guys broke up in pairs and went with other elements to check internal weapons caches. So that's when a deed starts to become more combative. You end up with more firefights and those kinds of things.
You can answer, or if you don't want to, I understand completely. Did you see any engagements while you were there? Were you involved in any engagements while you were there?
Sure.
I figured you were.
He's like, yeah.
And I don't know if you remember maybe I shouldn't ask this, but did you ever personally have a time where you actually saw the main guy?
There was a time or two when we were setting up and there would be a riot or whatever, you'd see him out there and you had him in, because at the time I used to be a sniper, so there was times or twos that we had a couple of those key people in crosshairs and elements above it because they want to prosecute them, right, to make an example to the world, wouldn't let us.
Oh my gosh. What were you feeling? What was the
Well, I get
feeling?
irritated then.
You're over there because that's your job, and you're being told, don't do this.
Yeah.
So
It's not the first time it's happened.
Well, and like, what were you feeling when you see him in your crosshairs, or like you just see him,
You're like, okay, well, there he is. Let's see what we got. What do you want us to do with him? No, just watch.
I mean, the adrenaline was running through your veins probably at that point. Maybe no, just kind of like no, there he
I
is.
think it would
Because
probably
did you
be-
know that they were going to say that? You probably knew.
Not directly.
Oh, okay,
It always comes as a shock when they tell you that.
really.
probably more of a cross
Irritated.
between irritated anger and disappointment that you've got,
You got the key player you want gone, but you won't let him be gone.
but you won't let him be gone.
I mean, I'm sure the two law enforcement guys can tell you exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I would have never made a good
Nope.
cop because I would have shot him on the site. Just because. Problem solved.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Of course, that problem's solved, but
Threat
that's going to create
eliminated.
a vacuum, and somebody else is going to step right back up. Then you could eliminate that problem too, though. Yeah.
you
Right.
can't-
Well, yeah, but I mean, at some point, right? How far down the rabbit hole are you going
Well,
to go? And right.
The thing that we, as Christians and U.S. people think, you have to go back and look at some of the things in the Bible, like when they went in and God told them to destroy everybody, everything for their land. Did they do that?
No.
No.
Yeah.
So that creates a problem. And we have a tendency to think everybody needs to be like we are and not how they're used to. Well, if you got a rat problem, you need to exterminate them all. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have a rat problem.
You'll slow it down, but eventually it comes back.
Right.
So that's what we end up with.
I got
But that's
you.
my 2 cents on that.
Just let you know, Terry's got a pocket full of change, so he'll give you a lot of 2 cents.
Yeah. That's just my 2 cents. That's funny. But yeah, that's really interesting because, you know, I don't know that many people hear that kind of statement, you know, like what's really going on behind the scenes when you've got those people. Because I think there are a lot, I say a lot of people. I mean, me statistically, okay, I'm the only civilian, right? So, but I mean, I've thought many times, you know, why don't they just take, like, there's no way, and that's why I asked you earlier, that they're capable of.
They are quite capable. And that's another
really?
thing we
Okay.
have that we fail to, and that's where those guys from Bragg failed, is your ego, the American ego, gets them too deep into believing their own press and to think that they're not as good as we are. Really?
Right.
Consistently over time, you're right. But one battle, one firefight, absolutely they are. And can you be led into a trap? Absolutely. As Andy said, these people, it's their backyard. They know the people. So how hard is it for me to misconstrue, lead you to where I want you to go?
And these people are not wearing uniforms either.
No.
I mean, they're wearing flip flops and shorts and
So it's not readily available as to who the enemy is.
yeah,
And everybody carries a gun.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, understandably.
They have constitutional carry. In Somalia.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting and eye opening for sure.
So and we just notoriously, and I see it repetitively throughout the multiple iterations of events I've played in, see that same thing start to transpire.
The ego of America.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can
And
understand
is it?
that.
I mean, it's not like we can't accomplish that task. By all means, we can absolutely. But when you start to believe that your enemy is below you, you have a problem.
And
That'll preach.
combine and then combine that with politics.
I stay out of that.
Yeah. You know, international politics. So
The
combine those two
politicians are
together.
just as bad.
Yeah.
That's a podcast for another day, Terry. 'Cause you and I are on the same page with that one.
They all need to be fired.
You know, just to give a side note, I've seen so many politicians go in and they have this I'm going to save the world mentality, and they go in for the right reason, but with a little bit of time in office,
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
you see a change in that person, man.
You see some of them that will get out too, and I've seen some people go, especially on the national level. You know, Martha Roby was one of them, and Martha was our 2nd congressional district, you know, congresswoman, and she went in, served a few terms, and got out and come back home, which was the original intent from the founding fathers to start with. It was not for somebody to go be a career politician for 20, 30, 40, 60 years like some of these people have. It was for the blacksmith to go be a representative of his district for a period of a couple of years and come back and go back to being a blacksmith again. Same thing with the farmer and the silversmith and the other you know,
Whatever vocations.
whatever vocation you were in, to go be a representative and then come back. And then let's send somebody else as a representative. It was never meant to be a career, but it's become that way. And unless you can get a convention of the states, there will be no term limits because Congress is not going to vote term limits for themselves. And they're the only ones currently who have the power to do that unless 3/5 of the states get together and
Tell them no.
And you see how fast we can go down different veins of stuff here. So let's kind of gear everything back to it. So we're back.
let's go back to the Gulf War.
Okay.
And then the incident you were involved in Iraq. What year was that?
Again, February of '91.
February's a good month for you.
Seems to be a good month.
Yeah.
So
we get all kinds of adventures.
Wait, it's February now.
It's February now, Terry. What's about to happen? So let's preface this too. There was a book written about this incident, and there was also was it Discovery Channel?
Yeah, Discovery / American Heroes, Military Channel, whatever. They did an interview for most of the team did.
Okay. So go ahead.
There was a guy by the name of George Wilson did a manuscript. This latest book that I've seen, I think it's called The Rescue of 525.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
I haven't read it.
I haven't read that one.
I think that's the title. I don't know where that one came from or who put that one out, but it had to be one of the guys, and I don't know which one, but it's irrelevant.
It's out.
It's out there. I mean, and most of those guys, all but two of us went to the interview for the Military Channel.
Did you go to that one?
No, never heard about it.
Really?
And a friend of mine, the senior weapons guy who lives up in Virginia, never. I think he heard about it, but he was like, "Oh, we're going to be able to tell the whole thing." Well,
So the whole thing wasn't told in the show.
well, let's say it was made to make certain people feel a little better about themselves. I gotcha.
Well, let's get the Paul Harvey version today. The rest of the story. How about that?
So tell us, go from the start. What was the mission?
So you're this fifth group, right?
Yeah.
You're deployed to Iraq.
So we got deployed to Iraq in August of '90 and set up we ended up staying down at what we call the Bat Cave, which is a brand new, not even completed international airport there in Saudi Arabia outside of Dhahran and Dammam. And so we were sitting there and just doing different training and whatnot. So we would do different drift movements, practices. Most all the other teams from the battalion group had gone, and probably September, October time period, had gone out to different units in the Saudi Arabian Army and all that stuff, and done normal FID, doing normal FID type stuff with them, normal SF things.
FID, you mean foreign internal defense stuff? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Basically
thank you.
playing
Thank
teacher.
You, Andy.
Basically playing teacher.
Yeah, right.
With the other units and whatnot. So and we ended up, we're more kind of a QRF type thing /
Quick
reaction force.
Thank you. See, this is what I'm talking about. I like this. I know what's going on now.
Well, sorry.
It's okay. It's a military thing. I've been around it forever, and I still am figuring it out.
Yeah, So we were doing those and setting that stuff up, and that's how we ended up getting designated to go, prep to go to Somalia in December when they were evacuating the Somali embassy, because we were there, we were handy, we were easily accessible, but it was going to take, we didn't have the capability to pull them out, and the embassy ambassador there in Somalia didn't think they needed somebody that quickly, because all we would have been able to do is get vehicles from local or from the embassy and bring everybody back into the embassy that lived outside the embassy. So that's where we got nixed on that. And then we got a mission set that they wanted us to go do strat recon or strategic recon, so deep back into Iraq. So we were on, I think it was Highway 7, runs out of Kuwait to Baghdad, about 75 miles south of Baghdad. Setting up on this major highway was what our plan was, to go infill.
Pretty much in the middle of nowhere, aren't you?
In the middle of nowhere. Farm fields.
Yeah.
And at the time, realized satellites don't exist. GPS nav doesn't exist quite anywhere close to what we have now. So there was a time period where GPSs would drop offline because there's just not enough satellite coverages. So you could use it, but you still had to do regular old-fashioned nav. And doing old-fashioned nav in a desert,
Not easy.
I mean, it's pretty much flat.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say, oh, this is that, or that's this, or this is that.
Like no landmarks to say, hey, that's where that might be.
No topo mounts.
So we're going in, we're setting up all this, and we're doing rehearsals and setting up a bunch of things and figuring out how to live in basically a 6x6 hole for 10 days. So we had to carry all of our gear, all of our water, all of our food, all of our ammo, all of our hide site kit and equipment to build this hide site. So what we'd found is looked like a creek, which would give us the ability to get rid of dirt without it being so noticeable. Mm-hmm. So we had camouflage, all that stuff, and look at where we can dispose of different things without tracking everything up. Because again, when you start to walk into a farmer's field, he knows if somebody's been in his field.
Yeah, you're leaving signature.
So we're trying to make it as least as possible. So we did those rehearsals, and we did this multiple times. And basically, we would get in at night, and by morning we'd have to be covered so that we couldn't be observed. So that's a pretty quick turnaround on getting all that stuff done. And we weren't too bad at doing that. We were pretty good. The biggest problem became the distance we could move with a reasonable answer, because as things go down, it's like all the gear starts to add up. I think everything, mine and the weapon sergeant, a friend of mine, I think our rucksacks weighed somewhere in the neighborhood about 150 pounds.
It's a heavy ruck.
It's a heavy ruck.
That's way more than 80 pounds in the Star Nav.
I mean, with all the gear.
With all the, I mean, I had.
Did you have combo gear and everything on yours? Or who?
Everybody, because back then we had so many different radios that command wanted us to carry to maintain comms.
That's not like it is nowadays. I mean, that gear was heavy.
Yeah, right. That's like back then when you got the bag for the cell phone, like that kind of stuff. Well, you don't have a cell phone probably, but
no, but I mean that was
that
different,
kind of stuff though.
Oh yeah, it's
heavy.
Your black boxes over there are almost the size of some of the radios.
Oh my gosh, that is wild.
Each of us probably had a 5-gallon can worth of water in our kits. So that's let's see, 5
40
gallons
pounds of weight right there.
That's 45 pounds of weight right there instantly.
Easy. Yep, easy.
And then you had to have food for 10 days. And then you had to have ammo, which we didn't carry a lot because we were doing a recon, so we're running basic ammo.
Yeah, you weren't expecting to be in a firefight.
No.
Yeah. So every day you're covering yourself back up. You said.
Well, we had to be. So we would. The idea was we were going to go in and put in a hide site and stay there. So we had to come up with a way to make something for a rooftop. So we were working in that, working out of that airport that's a brand new, still under construction.
Okay.
So we went and found a few things, and we made. I'd come up with a couple of designs depending on the two of us. We'd split our team into two formatted elements. And one split team I'd made a tarp and worked with the riggers. And they built us a tarp, and we used aluminum camo netting poles to make their roof system and support system in the center. Then ours, we used electrical conduit and used two different sizes with the quick couplers, so you could extend it and shrink it. So we built one out of that for that hide site, and then you needed chicken wire and bar intertwine and plastic and all that just to cover it all up, so you could reasonably walk on it.
Reasonably walk. Key word there.
It worked pretty good. I mean, after the fact, we found out that one of them really worked pretty good because it walked right over our hole.
So now So you get set, you get set. How long before you had the incident where?
So as we went in, the pilots, which were the 160th guys at the time from 3rd Battalion in Blackhawks, flew us in and took the landing gear off, tail wheel off their Blackhawk going in to infill us because they'd gotten their aircraft survival equipment, ASE gear, went off saying they were getting launched on by missiles. So they were ducking and diving and hit a sand dune and knocked off the aft landing gear. So when they set us in and we lost, because we were going in, we started in and then they called us off come back to the staging area, refueled the aircraft, changed our tune, and then we re-infilled. So we started a couple hours late, which put us out of the full time for us to use, which put us out of when satellite coverage. So by the end, the satellite coverage is dropped off. So when we got dropped off, it isn't exactly where we're supposed to be. And the pilots are like, hey, we're not exactly where you were supposed to be. We're close. We're within, you're a little closer, but we're not exactly.
Figure it out.
And again, it wasn't like we had you got to be at this exact location. So
Right.
Seeing as we're doing a recount, it's wherever we can find the best up point. But
So were y'all reconning traffic on the highway? That's what you're.
so that's what our purpose was, is to see whether or not indeed was reinforcing Kuwait or evacuating Kuwait.
Yeah.
Getting ready for Schwarzkopf's big push. So as we're sitting there, sun comes up and it's like, this ain't quite the right spot. Or actually that night we're like, this ain't quite the right spot because I don't see the creek, but there is an irrigation ditch here. And basically they're winter wheat fields that we're set in, and it's got all these irrigation ditches there, and they got little earthen dams. Mm-hmm. And we walked by one earthen dam, and we walked, my position was the rear position. So my team that I was with, the four-man element, we took up a farther observation position, and the team leader and his portion took up a closer to the road to watch the road, as Andy was saying, watching for vehicle traffic. And as daylight comes up, it's like, this ain't quite good. The people are looking for somebody. So there was people, we were by a village, and when we were initially looking for that, we shouldn't have been by a village. There was an old village across the street from where we were at, across the road from us.
When you say across the road, how far?
Probably, at that time, the road was probably 300 meters.
Oh, wow.
If that, from my position, so about 150 from the other guys.
You guys were close. I never realized it was that close.
Well, from where we ended up, after we evac'd that site and moved back farther, we weren't, but still maybe 500 meters from the road.
So like the sun started coming up, and you're like, wait a second.
There's all kinds of people out
we
looking.
need to move back.
Well, first we're like, how good are these? And unbeknownst to the four of us in our hide site, we didn't know exactly what the other guys had set up in theirs. Well, come to find out, the other guys had set up their hide site at that little earthen dam and was using that earthen dam so they didn't have to do any work, whereas we dug into the bank and done what we'd planned to do. So ours was relatively hidden. And you see all these people out just herding goats, running around, just doing normal day, but also looking for people because they'd heard helicopters in the area. And I think Saddam had all kinds of money out for people if you go reward money. So as we moved around, we stayed in our spots.
Really quick. So they hear helicopters, and that's their thing, is like helicopters. Okay, somebody's around here that is going to be, they're a bounty. So they start looking because they're going to get money.
That's suspected answers of what we looked at what's going on, because they were just kind of moving in a clockwise position or clockwise movement. They would come out of the village across to the east where we were at, across the road, out through the open field, herding goats. And again, like I said, it looked like a winter wheat field.
Now, when you see people moving around out there, what are you seeing? Are you seeing guys armed? Are you seeing guys? Are they just? Does it look like they're just looking for somebody?
They just look like they're herding goats. They look like normal, everyday, the local
ranchers in Iraq.
Ranchers out there carrying them, go on about their life, but paying attention to what's going on. Kids are out playing, and that's how it happened. And I don't remember exactly what time, but not too far into the morning, the other hide site, because they had set right along that earthen dam where the kids go play.
Uh-oh.
So they seen them or seen something. Well, not so bad that might, because it's kids, and is any parent that your kids come back and it's like, oh, I seen these funny eyes in the hole. It's like, yeah, go play.
Yeah. Right.
So again, we took stock of it, and just continued to watch the road, make marks, check down what was going on, vehicle movement, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And eventually them guys are like, they got compromised again. Yeah. No. Either way, we decided it's time to move out of that. So they come back and we started to evac all of those.
They wait to dark?
No.
Okay.
This
Time
is
to go now. Huh?
Yeah, this is still like, so daylight was like, say, 6 o'clock. This is like, what, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We're like,
no, it's time.
Let's go get out of this. So we went and grouped up in both elements of us, and we got all of our gear, left everything that we didn't need to carry to start finding a different location. Mm-hmm. So we still kept our rucks, most of our stuff, to find a new location to continue with that. And called Hire and let Hire know what was going on. So we got our little cigar shape element sitting in a ditch, pulling security and waiting. And lo and behold, here comes the goat herder and his 2 sons walk right through our little cigar shaped perimeter. It's like, oh, assalamu alaikum.
So they actually saw you.
Oh, they walked right through that little perimeter.
All right,
And
here's the
headed
question
towards
I
town.
got. Here's the question I got. You guys are an 8-man element. You're there. You're trying to hide your identity. And I think you and I had this talk before. And I know what you're going to say. What went through your head at that point? Do we dump these guys? Do we let them go? I mean,
At that point, again, I bring up our little incident of our Okaloosa County cops. I have no targets to really shoot. Yes, I have bodies.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, they had the kids earlier. But again, do I really have anybody to deal with? And
You
go
have a
back and you look.
compromise of your
It's a direct
security.
threat,
Yeah. There's no direct threat, but you have a compromise of your team at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, we have to think in terms of,
Yeah.
are they just every day,
Just walking around. Yeah.
you know, I'm out here doing my
Well,
normal
you can't
thing.
tell. You have no way to tell if they're really going to do something or not
So
because of
you
the way
have
they
to
do.
give them that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, or at least we chose to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
Right.
You even have Luttrell where they had some of the similar things happen to him in Afghanistan later, years later. But so we gave them the benefit of the doubt, watched what was going on, and the old man walked straight to this town and started flagging vehicles down. It's like, okay, it's time for all this gear.
And he has now become a threat.
But again, he still doesn't have a weapon yet.
Yeah, right. But question answered whether or not he's going to do
Yeah.
something.
What are his
What's his
intentions?
intent?
Yeah.
He's
found out.
Questions answered.
He's trying to get somebody to call Saddam at that point. Yeah.
Well, no, he's flagging vehicles down.
Yeah,
And this is
yeah.
where we realized now that every one of those vehicles actually had people on them. Because now you would see regular conscripts unloading the bus. Or
So your
vehicle.
job just got easier in a way and harder at the same time.
Everything's clear, a little bit clearer now.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, there's more.
Oh, no. So now we decide we're going to go into, as Eric said, E&E and start to get back out of here and head our E&E.
Escape and evasion.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Salam alaikum.
Basically, the greeting in Arabic.
Okay, got it.
Praise God. God be with you.
Okay, got it. I meant to ask you that earlier.
Basic greetings.
Cool.
And some spoke more Arabic. So they,
You speak Arabic, don't you?
not much anymore.
It's like, hey, how y'all doing?
Yeah, right. Good morning.
Salama,
Whatever.
how's your mama?
Yeah.
But
Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead and continue, please.
so we stack all of our gear, and I built a charges for our comms because again now we have crypto that needs to be, in other words, secure communication stuff that needs to be destroyed because we don't need to carry all that garbage.
and you don't want them to get a hold of it.
And we don't want them having it because now that would, in theory, compromise the entire battle space. Unbeknownst to us, simultaneously, another team doing the same thing we are ends up in a gunfight at the same time. They're actually under fire, and they had split their team a little different than we did. So
How far away?
I don't remember. They were a few miles away, several miles away, in another location. I don't remember their exact, but I just know that at the same time, so now we started to call for emergency evac. And to get set up what we called emergency CAS, or close air support. And because that other team was compromised, they were like, hey, back and forth with the team leader and team sergeant and the radio guys, back and forth on what was going to happen. So then we moved farther down the creek channel there, a little ditch, irrigation ditch, come to a spot where it looks like there's a little driveway through, or a flood area capability to flood the fields. And end up having to hold up there as we start to see people getting out of, confirming all these people are now getting out. People are now starting to fan out and try to find where things are going, and they're starting to bring those out. And it's like, this isn't a good spot yet.
Were some of them armed?
I don't remember if we could see if they were armed yet or not. I don't recall, because I think it was the villagers still. So it hadn't really got to the military people yet, but now the villagers had started gathering around, and he'd gathered
Just
up
stop what they're doing, and they're like, nope, this is what we're doing today, kids. We're going to go find these people.
Yeah.
Right. So then we continued to move past that little low spot, and the creek, or the ditch that we were in, made a 90-degree turn. So if we went out, continued east like we wanted to, we were basically in open field. Or we turned 90 degrees, which then set us up facing the roadway that's about 500 meters away, maybe a little more, somewhere in that range. And then we had the one creek that came into us, so we basically had an L-shaped setup for our perimeter. And I had the back 180 degrees security. Everybody else had the front. We had two guys that had MP5s, which are useless for what we're doing. So they guarded the two ends. One guarded the one end that headed south, and one guarded the other creek ditch that came in from the east, from the west to the east, guarded that. The medic was down there with the team leader guarding that one corner, and then the junior weapons guy was working with the commo guy. And they were asking, just trying to figure out what's going on and trying to get that and trying to get comms. Well, at the time, we had so many different radios, and they ended up losing, as we ran down the ditch, one of the antennas that was just kind of had a coax connector to connect the antenna to that. So now that radio is basically useless.
Yeah.
And about that same time, you can see a group of people show up about where we were, and they seen all of our rucks. And I'd set, I think, about a minute time fuse on the rucksacks. So you see these guys show, and the reason I say you see them or hear them show up is simultaneously you hear them start shooting, and the charges go off. So they thought they'd had somebody, but it was all of our rucksacks in a pile. And the charges went
And you
off.
did that on purpose to, yeah.
Well,
Or, I mean,
But you say you started hearing them shooting, and then the rucks go off. So now you know this is getting
yeah. So
intense.
now we know they've got guns and are shooting, willing to shoot.
okay.
And so continue to see vehicles stopping, and more people start to filter out. So as we sat there in this, and again, it's a nice, big, flat field. There is cover because you can come down the side there through that ditch and whatnot. But again, it's, for the most part, it's a big wheat field. Not terraced like here, but nice, flat. Tabletop.
Nice and flat. Real happy about that.
Yeah. So as that goes on, you see these people starting to get out, and now they're starting to be uniforms. And we've already had that instance. And now they start to progress on us, and we got emergency CAS coming, but we no longer can talk to them. So now as the vehicles start showing up, the aircraft are trying to talk to us. Well, we can't talk to them. And one of the guys is like, hey, do you remember if you got your PRC-90, which is a old survival radio, Vietnam era survival radio. That was our current survival radio, which is basically a line of sight, almost like a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And the reason for 90 is it's supposed to work 90 miles on a good day.
Again, the key word is supposed to.
Supposed to.
That's
Yeah.
the same radio that pilots would carry, right?
Yep.
Yeah. The one you've seen in the movies where you have a down pilot and he's trying to talk to his
Oh,
rescue
is that right? Oh,
It's coming
okay.
to get him,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
From Vietnam.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're sitting there with that and finally get a hold of the aircraft. The first pair of aircraft show up overhead and can't talk to us, and we can't direct them. Because, again, they're at a hard deck, so they don't get shot down by SAMs. So their hard deck is 20,000 feet or something ridiculous. An F-16 at 600 knots is a speck.
Yeah.
And I'm fixing to drop a bomb on the bottle tree.
Right. Well, like
From here.
that's the distance.
Yeah.
Not literally. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
So there's margin for error there. Too.
Yeah.
And
So
of
you
course,
guys are
in
trying
that
to-
time period, they're all dumb bombs per se. And
Yeah.
we have no idea what's even on the airplane, let alone the fact that the pilot has to pitch the bomb, so to speak.
Wow.
You just know you need the support.
We just know we need
Yeah, you need
some
something to
additional
happen.
to knock heads
You're
down.
probably
Yeah.
engaging at this point. You're also trying to talk to them. You know you need the support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those two are, no, we haven't really started to engage yet
Okay.
because that group hasn't really got,
I got
we're
you.
still trying to,
Ease out of here.
My gosh,
We're
that is
trying.
not far. I mean, I'm looking over there at the bottle tree. I'm like, jeez. Like, I would
Yeah, exactly.
I see why they train you for these things.
so as we're sitting there and the junior weapons guy is trying to work on his radio or is getting to the point of working on the radio, that pair of aircraft go and because they're running out of fuel, they dump off, they do a handoff to the next pair that's inbound. And somebody reminds him about his 90 and he finally starts talking on the 90, trying to talk to the next pair of aircraft that come in. About that time now, we're starting to end up in a firefight. So now we're having the issue of trying to not let them get around us and flank us. So the two weapons guys are making sure in clearing with the team leader, hey, we good to fire now?
Yeah. Are you at this point taking people out, or are you just scaring
Not
them?
yet.
You're kind of keeping
Not
them
yet.
at
We
bay.
haven't fired around yet.
Oh, you haven't. Oh, okay. So how are
We're
you
still-
keeping them from flanking?
So that's what we're watching now that they're starting to do that. And we're asking the team leader, hey, we clear to take these guys out.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, yeah. Because almost simultaneously, as the question's going on, the goat herder that walked through our thing is pacing off to our north and takes a shot and literally
The
kicks
goat herder
dirt.
takes a shot.
The goat herder takes a shot and missed the team leader's head by the distance of me to Andy,
Wow.
where it hit the dirt mound and kicked dirt all over everything. The medic took care of that problem.
Okay. Got it.
So now we started to engage these guys. So now we didn't want them to get in that ditch because then it would give them cover all the way up to us. So we would drop 2 or 3 rounds into the ditch, which forced them back up into the open field, which then would allow us to engage them with regular weapons. And the other weapons guy would, as they would try to go to our south and flank us, he would drop 2 or 3 rounds over there to force them back. So back and forth. And then we took over, the senior weapons guy took over because the junior weapons guy realized his 90 would work and he was starting to talk to Cass. So the first bombs, he's like, the gas guys showed up and they're like, hey, okay, ident your position. Can you ID us? And we're like, no, you need to come lower. So finally, and there's another instance where these pilots have talked about that and having to drop bombs basically on top of us because literally the road is 500 meters. The first set of bombs that we actually directed in there come in and it was a cluster bomb. And the guy on the radio, PRC-90, he's like, hey, keep your heads down because here it comes. And it's like, okay. no, I got to see this. So I'm like sitting over top of the edge of the berm, and I hear the junior weapons guy screaming about the bomb broke. The bomb broke. The bomb broke. That's how close we were with this cluster bomb coming in. You can see the burster charge go off on the nose of it. The clamshells fly open, and all the baseball-sized bomblets come flying out.
And you were close enough to see all that.
Close enough to see all that.
Yeah. How effective was it?
Let's say that changed a little tune, but it's still, we still ended up in a firefight with CAS dropping bombs on targets, because that was probably about 11, 12 o'clock. And we continued to drop bombs on vehicles that were pulling up and driving, forcing people going back away from us and not allowing them to get behind us with bombs.
Yeah, right.
And we were dropping, at times we'd drop 2,000 pounders within 500 meters.
So what is like the safe range typically?
That's not it.
I mean, I'd like to know typically what your safe zone is.
That is not it.
Not even close.
Yeah.
What are you in? Crazy question, but these things are going off. What are you feeling? How are you feeling? What are you feeling as far as when that happened?
Concussion, right?
Yeah, concussion is what I'm saying. I mean, how's that affecting you and the team?
Depends on the person. A couple of them, the medic and the junior weapons guy, were like waving goodbye to each other.
Oh, wow.
Thinking their day was done.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, what's up?
This is all part of it.
This is all part of the adventures. And I'm like, oh, that's what an AK sounds like over my head. It does make a distinctive sound to coin Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak.
It makes a distinctive sound with fire action.
It has a distinctive different crack over your head than a sniper rifle does, than a 5.56 does, than a 45 or a 9mm.
So it's something you can discern. Huh?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't an acorn.
Oh, man, we're going to get some comments from the people in Fort Walton. It's okay. We don't mind.
Wow.
So how long did this go on?
So that's basically till dark. So we dropped bombs until dark. And
You're talking about 6 hours or so.
yeah, 6 hour gun battle. We were running, dropping bombs. And
And they're just sending people in the whole time.
because they're flagging vehicles down. And all these vehicles are evac Iraqi army coming out of Kuwait.
Oh my gosh. So you just
And-
hit it at the right time. Well, that was what you were there to do.
No, we were there just to watch.
Right. You're there
We're
to
not there
watch,
to
but
engage.
Nobody knows
those
they
were the
get
trucks
out.
you're watching, right? As they evac.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, supposedly you're trying to catch those guys, but now they're coming in.
They got their intel. Just probably didn't want to get it that way.
Yeah, right.
Recon by fire.
Right. Holy no! Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So basically now, the last flight that we dropped bombs with, the moon was coming up and the sun was going down. So we were using that as a way to flash the pilots with our signal mirror. So we would line him up on the sun. Hey, fly from the sun to the moon. Those are known references. I can reference you, and we'll flash you. So he flips upside down so he can see what's going on, and we flash him as we see him. So he gets an ID where we're at. He's already kind of got an ID because they're getting handoffs from the other pilots as they've been running in and out of there and where they drop bombs. And they can see the wreckage because we blew up multiple vehicles on the road because we're running 2,000 pounders down the road a couple of different times dropping bombs. So that last pair we run in there, and then finally, because now, like I said, our evac earlier in the day got scrubbed, partially because we were like, we think we can manage to get out of here. And then partially because another team got compromised. And at the time, the medic on the radio thought his team sergeant got hit. And really, he hadn't gotten hit, but just out of the corner of his eye, he's seen his team sergeant drop in a round kick dirt up.
Okay.
So he thought, and he was calling for their emergency evac. So that aircraft that was supposed to go get them went to get them instead. So ours didn't come in until after dark. So now we have to move to a new LZ because we don't want where we just had a firefight, the LZ, the aircraft to come in on. So I picked up who was it with me? Me and another guy, we took off and went another 400 or 500 meters. We ran into the actual creek we were looking for.
So you finally found the creek. Huh?
Found the creek. It's like, we're going to go to the other side of this creek. That gives us a little barrier. So then once that was completed, we ended up getting out there. Finally got a hold of the aircraft when they were coming in, let them know, hey, it's a cold LZ. It's not a hot LZ. You don't need them come in blasting things under goggles. I've already escaped that adventure.
Yeah, right.
At any point were you guys running low on anything? Did you think
That's what I was going to...
I didn't fire but about 8 rounds because, again, like I said, I set up as the rear security, so I covered a back 180 degrees.
Right.
And would help out the senior weapons guy. So I fired like 8 or 12 rounds.
Yeah.
And the whole goal was that they didn't make it back there.
Yeah,
that was
because if they could surround us, now we're in serious trouble.
Right.
So we used all of our tools that we had to make sure they couldn't surround us. And after the fact, years later, we found out that there was a massive force coming north to get us.
Massive. When you say massive, what is massive?
We left 120 dead in the field.
Yeah.
Larger than that.
Nice. So you guys got out of there in the nick.
No. So to speak.
So to speak.
Wow.
Was anybody injured in that?
No. Nobody got a scratch.
Wow.
Very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
God looked out for us that day.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes into, well, I say kind of, that goes into something. You spent how long in the Army?
I did 21 years.
All right, 21 years. You've had multiple deployments.
Yep.
Multiple issues where, in law enforcement, both Andy and I can sit there and say this. There's times that we're like, how do we make it through that? And I'm pretty sure that there's times where you have sat there and said, how did I make it through that?
There's only one answer to those questions.
I've got to ask this because we are a faith-based program. How much in your career did faith play into your career?
I guess you have to further define that question.
You believe in a higher power.
Yes.
100%, right?
Yeah.
Situations like that where there's really no legitimate excuse as to why it turned out how it did. That's what your belief is. You had somebody else's hand on you.
Yeah, God had his hand on you.
He always has his hand on us. And it's like my beautiful wife nowadays. Andy knows her quite well because he's big friends with her brother-in-law.
Yeah. Gonzo.
No way.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
And she is very, very much so believing of God and has everything going on. Me, I believe that same thing, but I look at it in terms of he gave me skills and gives us those kinds of skills where she's like, oh, he did it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yes.
Yes, but without action, there's no power.
We have to look at ourselves. I mean, each one of us that are Christians are God's vessel. And if you're a vessel worthy of using, then he's going to use those skills that he's given you as his vessel to accomplish his mission and his purpose.
Yeah. And there's a willingness on our part to allow that to happen in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
Has she had a big effect on you? Obviously. Obviously.
She's a great woman.
She's a great woman. That's a good answer.
I can't say amazing because she'll get mad. She hates that word. Amazing.
Okay. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Susan's a good one. Yeah, she's a good cook too, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then the Harris household is probably eating pretty good because Terry's a pretty good cook himself.
Yeah, he is. Terry Harris is he's a Renaissance man. he's my hero. He's a Renaissance
yoga
man.
instructor,
a yoga instructor, SF. And we haven't even touched on your time in the 160th. I think we need to go through that before we run out of time.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
We need to. I mean, you ended up being a helicopter pilot in a special operations aviation unit, the premier, the Nighthawks, the
Night Stalkers.
I'm sorry, but the 160th Special Operations, aviation regiment. But what made you want to transition from being a SF guy on the ground to being a rotorhead? You want to be a pilot.
Probably what he experienced. I'm just kidding.
So you asked that, and it was one of those. I had an option when I was in Somalia. So I during Desert Storm, I put it in, and they were like, "Oh, you don't have enough leadership time." I'm thinking to myself, "Yeah, okay, whatever."
They didn't say you were too dumb.
No, because I'd already gotten smart enough.
They educated him at that point.
So I applied again, and now I had an opportunity. We had what we called project teams in 5th group. So they were doing special details and special functions. And I'd gone to the advanced non-commissioned officer course, or ANOC, with a couple of people and became friends with them. And they were like, "Hey, you want to come work with us?" I'm like, maybe. And I had my flight packet in because I was like, look up and helicopter goes fly by. It's like, he ain't carrying no damn rucksack that weighs. He's not
The helicopter's
living in the
doing
mud.
all the work for him.
He's not living in the mud. Oh, and I don't have to take this SQT or skill qualification test every year. Yeah,
I want to fly.
I want to fly. So that's how I got started in that game. And then another friend of mine, while we were here at flight school, came from 7th group and was into the same basic backgrounds and was like, here to fly helicopters. And then he knew somebody at the regiment, and Colonel Daly at the time, who was the 3rd Battalion commander, so he kind of knew who I was after a minute, because he was involved in the Desert Storm stuff because he was the battalion commander then. And basically I was looking to start a program to bring in selected individuals to fly Chinooks for the 160th, because generally speaking, Chinook pilots are kind of laid back, lazy, not going to work too hard compared to the rest of the other helicopter pilots in the Army. And you can see them. The others got all kinds of egos with them, but they're all good. But so he wanted more aggressive people. And we had a background in doing missions and briefings and those kinds of things. And as he told us, he had to teach people 3 things when they came to the regiment. 1, how to fly how they wanted them to fly. 2, being able to brief and plan. And then 3, just being able to actually get through that kind of struggle. So that's how we got picked up to go do all that stuff. So we ended up there and flying for them guys and flying Chinooks for them and doing all that.
Now, you said you flew Little Birds for just a little bit.
Yeah, Little Birds were part of our training program. So as we went through our basic nav, or BNAV as we call it, that was what we would do. So we would fly Little Birds.
But you ultimately knew you were going to fly the Chinook.
Oh, yeah. We were hired to fly Chinooks, period. So we had gone through flight school, and I flew a Huey then and a 58. And then I was supposed to fly 58 days and got selected in a regiment. So then we went into and we flew a 47D for initial training because the regiment hadn't completely set up all of its own. And once we were selected, went through BNAV flying a OH-6. And then once we finished BNAV and started doing our actual primary training for the regiment, we started flying 47Es, the first glass aircraft, cockpitted aircraft. There's all kinds of TV screens. And, Oh, yeah.
And now you've moved into...
Now I teach kids how to
teach how to do that.
I teach them all that glass stuff.
What kind of deployments did you have as a pilot?
So we stayed busy doing all that training, and I'm sure you're probably getting towards 9/11's adventures. So in September of 9/11 that week, I was already out in Roswell, New Mexico, of all fun places, setting up with 5th Group a training event to do infills, basically like we were talking to, into a denied territory and set up so that they could go in and link up with assets in country and take over said country if we needed to. So when I woke up one morning, I'm like, I left the TV on. What the heck movie is this? I went downstairs, went to the gym, and was sitting there in the gym doing some stuff and stretching and whatnot, and got in a hot tub, and the S2 guy comes in. Did you see what happened? I'm like, now what?
Well, we're about to get busy.
Oh, man.
So we finished our site survey we were doing out there. Went up to Clovis, New Mexico, to Cannon Air Force Base, and went in there and looked at using all the facilities that we needed to use and function out of there to figure out where we were going to operate from and set up all of our stuff here in several months based upon what was going to happen or what not was going to happen. And then we drove from Clovis, New Mexico to Lubbock, Texas, because that's where we picked up the rent-a-car we currently had, from Lubbock, Texas to Nashville to pick up our personal vehicles, and then back to work on Monday after. By that Wednesday, my S3 was back. Actually, Monday I came in the office, and the young captain that was with us on the site survey was sitting in the S3's office. And I asked him, so what's our plan? He's like, well, you know, I can't tell you. I'm like...
And your S2s and your S3s, that's your intelligence people, right?
No, the S3 is the ops guys.
Okay, ops guys.
Operations people.
Okay.
So they're doing all the planning. We do all the planning. The operations does. Intel gives us all the intel on. The S2 guys give us all the intel on it. So the operations, so we're in the ops in our office, and the assistant's S3, as the captain is called, is sitting in the 3's shop office because the 3 has gone down to Florida here to MacDill to look at what we're going to plan to do. I'm like, okay, so what's our plan? He's like, well, you know, we're waiting to see what the 3 has. I'm like, okay, so where are we supposedly going to go to operate out of? Well, I can't tell you that right now. I'm like, okay. First of all, he's got a country map up. I'm like, well, here's this country, Turkmenistan or Tajikistan, this one, that one. Here's Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is historically where the Russians came out of. It gives us the best access. So that's probably where we're going to go. And he's like, well, how do you know that? I kind of just told you, sir.
Military history.
You know, some of the guys I used
figure this out, but if it crosses Terry's mind, it kind of
Comes out.
I mean, it's kind of like, you know, back years ago, when I was in group, we had some of the guys that worked with him who's Gene.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So S3 comes back the next day. He's like, hey, can you leave tomorrow? I'm like, okay. Where am I going? Well, you're going over here. Okay. Can I have some guns and ammo? Sure. When am I supposed to leave? Or what do I need? Well, I don't know. Okay.
All right.
So packed up all my gear, went and got some ammo, grabbed the supply guy, which kind of works as our guy that carries cash with us. So we could go set everything up for the aircraft, and all the support coming in. So he gets on a plane, and we get a call, and the 130 that we're supposed to get on out of MacDill has a possible landing gear issue, so they're not going to land at Campbell to pick us up. So, because currently the only thing flying is military. So, shortly later, like, hey, there'll be a Cessna over here to pick you guys up. Okay.
Roger that.
Okay. And you're going to take this team sergeant from 5th Group. All right. So 3 of us with 3 bags apiece, guns, ammo, grenades, climb on a civilian jet with 2 civilian pilots that work for the government.
So you're talking like a Cessna Citation. I thought you were talking about like a 172 or something. Okay. Yeah.
And flies to Dover to meet these other guys because they're catching a C-5 across the pond. So we get up there, and of course it's storming. We land. We start to take our bags off, and the Air Force kid comes out, and he's like, hey, you guys got a manifest? No, I don't. Talk to the pilots about offloading gear. One of the pilots is helping us offload gear. He's like, hey, where's the, where do we get fuel at? well, you got to manifest. And the guy's like, yeah, you got to talk to the pilot. The pilot comes out and he's like, hey, where can I order fuel? I need fuel to get back such and such a place. Again, realize this is 2 civilian pilots in a civilian aircraft. And we're all dressed in civilian clothes, unloading all kinds of gear.
Yeah.
And of course, the Air Force is going to want us to go through security, which means they're going to take guns, ammo, and knives, which we already have.
Yeah, like what is going on?
How'd that work out?
So he finally gets where he's supposed to order fuel, and we're walking there, and I see a couple guys that I remember from 5th group. I'm like, hey, we need to go through these doors here. So we went in the back doors and linked up with them. So we didn't go through all the
there you go. There you go.
stuff where he was wanting us to go.
Jeez.
And we ended up in Spain. Yeah, Spain. Again, waiting for final confirmation where we're going. And then we get a couple days later, we get the USAFE. In other words, the 4-star Air Force general in charge of Europe. His private jet shows up to pick us up. Of course, his crew chief with that pilot's like, because now we linked up with these other guys, and now there is, what is there, 2, 4, 6, 8 of us now, with 3 bags apiece.
Guns, grenades, and ammo.
Well, they didn't. We did. They didn't. We did.
Necessities.
Necessities.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So we're loading all of our bags on, and the guy's like, I don't know if these bags are going to be able to go. And I looked at him and I go, I'll tell you what, the bags will go or you won't. He's like, what? You heard me. It's like, I don't know who you guys are. It's like, this is the general, the 4-star general's plane. I'm like, obviously, we got enough horsepower that we can get his plane.
Yeah. You're gonna let us on.
You're going to take it.
I mean, just saying. Yeah. He got told. Do you know who the Joint Chief is? Which just so happened at the time, the Joint Chief's son lived next door to me.
Oh.
Hugh Shelton was
wow.
the Joint Chief of Command. His son lived next door to me and was my neighbor in the unit with me.
Nice.
Because he hadn't transitioned yet because...
So what, like communication just wasn't working or something? Like it was just so disorganized? Is that normal? Is this a normal
You
occurrence?
guys continue. If y'all need to close, I've got to go handle something again real quick. We're still operating business, so I apologize. So.
You're good.
So, it's one of those where you're still looking at politicals as to where you can actually go work out of. You just don't get to go roll into somebody's backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they're still doing all the political work. We're moving as far forward as we can get. So
It's just having to happen so quickly that people aren't being updated fast enough and things aren't.
It's on
Not everybody.
basis too.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. They're not letting everybody know. Okay,
So, I mean,
I got you.
Here you have a crew chief on an airplane. His job is to go fly the general. He's not flying the general. Well, your job is to fly the general. Why is my plane here? Well, it's your plane. That's why you're here.
Like he doesn't need to know what's going on with everything else. I see now. That makes a lot more sense.
So, and again, things are fluid and changing because you haven't decided that, that's going to happen, or no, that's not going to happen, or what's going to happen. Kind of like in Desert Storm when we went in and they turned us around and we came back after short of crossing the border or just after crossing the border.
You're probably dealing with the State Department too, trying to get permissions in different countries to, like I said, move forward to where you need to be.
So if we don't have a base, you can't just roll in.
Yeah.
Like everybody thinks the U.S. does.
Right.
There's coordination's done.
Yeah, makes sense.
So we finally get that coordination. We got that aircraft and we flew up and we linked up with the refueler because we were going to need a refuel airplane to refuel us. So it's a C-130. Pretty good little airplane. So it flies us into Uzbekistan. We get basically met at the airfield by the Uzbeki equivalent of the Joint Chief of Staff of their army. It's like, you can have this, period. This is what you can use.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Wow.
So then we set that northern invasion base up and basically started having couple days later, we ended up with C-17s about every hour, landing, dropping equipment and troops and personnel and bringing in aircraft and setting everything up. So that's October. Sitting at my house, we have I have a 105 round that came back out of from one of the first rounds fired from the AC-130 for support for some of the people.
Wow. That's amazing.
So
How long did you stay over there? In those missions.
I left in right about Christmas time on that adventure. So we set up that, and just prior to Thanksgiving, we went down to Bagram because the 5th Group AOB had pushed the Taliban off of out of Kabul and Bagram Airfield. So we went down there to jump that talk forward to have aircraft down there. And of course, there's an American 2-star general running it, and I'm over there because I work for the JSOTF commander, was Joint Forces Commander, who's a colonel. So, in my old regiment commander is down there, who's a 2-star general, works for the other people, and he's in there also. So there's all kinds of people now in Bagram doing all kinds of things. You had the British people in there, you had everybody in there. So we were working in there trying to set stuff up and get things set up for that talk forward. And you also have the American regular Army general setting in, who was a former soft guy. So his colonel would come over to the AOB for briefings on our daily briefs. And he would, hey, Chief, you need to brief the general. And I'm like, well, I just don't walk into the general's office, so if you got me an appointment, I'm working on it. When you get an appointment, you let me know, and I'll walk in and talk to the general.
Yeah.
And I continue to do my mission. So eventually, the day the aircraft are arriving, I go in to brief the general. So I briefed this 2-star general about what we were planning to do and what's going on. He's like, okay. And personally, I'd like, don't give a shit if you care or not. You ain't in charge. Yeah. Your rank may think you're in charge, but you're not in charge.
Yeah, right.
It's just a courtesy of letting you know.
Yeah.
And he goes, so when are the aircraft landing? I said, oh, they'll be here in about, the first guy's going to be here in about 45 minutes or an hour. Realize, and the aircraft will be here in about 2 hours. It's a 4-hour flight. And I just briefed the general for his permission.
They're already on the way.
They're already coming.
Yeah. They're here. Basically. That's just, yeah. Wow.
So a good friend of mine, the battle captain who ended up being the battle captain, was Steve Reich. And he showed up on that 130 with some of the other people to set stuff up, set our comms up and other things. So I took him around and introduced him to those people. I took him over to the general. And the general looks at him and goes, Captain, if you're not as good as him, you can get right back on that that 130 and leave. We
There
leave.
you go.
We leave, and Steve looks at me and goes, what did you tell him? Don't worry about it, sir. You're good. Now realize this is the guy that went to get Luttrell and those guys when the ones they got their helicopter blown up.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was now, fast forward to that time period in 06, he is the company commander, AMC, or mission commander for that mission to go rescue those guys and get shot down with a.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that Extortion 17? Was that one?
I don't
What they call
remember.
it? Yeah.
It's the one that got shot
Yeah.
with the RPG going in to rescue
Yeah.
those guys,
Yeah.
patrolling them guys.
So you got out of the Army probably, what, about 02?
2004.
04, okay. So after you get out of the Army, what do you do then?
So
I mean,
after-
it's hard to, and you know, I'm a testament to that, but it's hard to transition out of an action career, and then all of a sudden you're like, what do I do? I've been doing this for 20 or 30 years. I was like, I'd been a cop for 30 years, and I'm like, what do I do now? You know, that kind of thing. So
After I got out, I worked at Bragg for selection and assessment and the different phase training. So now I went out and back, became one of those point sitters and would sit there and talk to those kids as they come strolling through there and be like, hey.
This was me 20 years ago.
Yeah. How's that rucksack?
But they have changed how they do it. So now they didn't have to get all their points. They just have to go do it repetitive days.
Oh.
And total up to a grand total of 9 points. Whereas we had to get all of our points.
Or go home.
Or go home.
You feel like
or go back and retest it.
You feel like that was kind of like a
6 of one, half dozen the other. Yeah. Different mindsets, different training styles, different
environment.
Just different environment. It's another technique.
Yeah. Okay.
Good, bad, indifference. Just another technique.
Yeah.
After that, sold used cars for a while. That was sporting good fun. Now there's some criminals.
Oh God, I didn't know that. Yeah. I don't guess I knew that part about
Get your hands into some things.
I knew you were kind of shady there.
Right. Yeah, that was the problem. Yeah. They were too shady. They were trying to Jew me out of $1,000 one day, and I was like, "Yeah, we're done, people."
Yeah, can't do that.
So I guess at some point, I think I met you in 2006.
Yep. When we started the SEER program at Rucker, so I was the evasion shooting manager and taught all the evasion and escape and shooting stuff, and built all of that for me and a friend of mine. A couple of the regular Army guys built all of that, the range and the shooting and all the barriers.
Wow.
I remember Terry, the first time I met Terry is, that's when Dothan PD, we had that tyrant of a chief that he was, had ran off so many officers. And I was really, truly at the time looking for somewhere to go. And because I was just really fed up with the environment at Dothan PD. And I'd put in an application as a firearms instructor at the SEER school. And survival, evasion, resistance, escape.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
But, and basically what they do at the SEER schools, they teach pilots, in case you get shot down in hostile territory, this is how you survive. And if you're captured, this is how you survive being captured, and then teach you to escape also.
Okay, yeah, I've heard stories about people there's probably something different in each area maybe, or is it all the same?
The military has they have different.
Each branch has their own program.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because I've heard about it in aviation, I guess, or the Air Force, that they go
Air
and do
Force
the
has
same
an
thing,
actual
but I don't think it's called
MOS for training.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Oh, it is called Sears?
Yeah. Not Sears as in Sears and Roebuck, but
Sears.
Yeah. But I met Terry in 2006. I interviewed with you and Big Thor, Big Jim, over at a hotel in Enterprise, and ended up getting that job. And during that sometime I had to end up quitting my job because I was already in a campaign for sheriff. But I went to work for a few months over at the SEER school and got to know Terry and enjoyed my time over there. Ended up, I don't know how I ended up introducing Eric somehow or another.
We needed some more people.
Yeah, and then Eric ended up going over. And I enjoyed my time at the SEER school. And some of the barriers, man, for a big guy like me, it was really tough. How long was that section of pipe? Was it 21 feet or something under the roadway? But you had to traverse this corrugated pipe that run under a road. Okay, and you had to go through there, and not only go through there, but you had to carry a 40-pound ruck with you.
Oh my gosh!
When you went through there,
that sounds like my nightmares.
You either had to push it or you had to pull it.
Claustrophobic.
Yeah, so I ended up pushing it,
Hey,
and my
claustrophobia is a thing that the psychs tell you. They're the only one who can say you have claustrophobia.
You can overcome.
I believe that. Yeah, I'm sure. That's
Otherwise,
true.
it's just confinement issues.
But I just
okay, but we'll just give it a different name. All I know is that when I'm in a confined space.
Yeah. I chose to push my ruck through there. So we're talking about the pipe.
Oh, the pipe?
The pipe.
But I had to I don't know, the pipe was, my shoulders were wider than the pipe.
Yeah, so for everybody that's watching that doesn't know Andy, how tall are you?
6'3".
Yeah, okay. So you're not a small person at all.
So I had to go through this pipe and it was like this, and you pull yourself,
your belly.
push your ruck, pull yourself a little bit, ruck. The next day or two I got up and I was like, oh my God, what'd I do to my abs? They were just terribly sore, but it was from pulling yourself through that little small pipe. And it was about, the typical roadway is like 18 feet across. This pipe was maybe 20 feet, something like that. But that was one of the barriers that you had to get.
Wow.
I will tell you that I learned that I was claustrophobic
Yeah, yeah.
Terry just
that's
debunked.
a story that doesn't need to go any
debunked
farther.
claustrophobia.
I know
Yeah,
that story too, but Terry just debunked that. He said it's all in your mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all in your mind.
I'm going to let you guys close this out. Everybody knows that we still operate business here, so I do have to step out. Terry, thank you so much for coming today.
Sure, my friend.
Yeah.
I got to go take care of some stuff. I wanted to sit back in. The stories were amazing. I'm glad glad you took time out of your day and took the day off.
Yeah.
just for us. So,
Yeah.
Everybody out there, love you. Jesus loves you. I'm going to let these guys close out today. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Eric.
Cool.
See ya.
So, but then after SEER, you were the manager of the SEER program or for Sokola, the contractor at the time over there, and done that, and then you left that, and what are you doing now?
So I did that up until about 2010 when whoever the course chief at the time was a former Air Force SEER guy / Apache pilot who'd retired, wanted to try to tell me how to do evasion. Didn't quite see eye to eye, so I went and now I teach kids all the CAS products, all the inside of the helicopter for flying helicopter 47s.
Yeah. You teach them how to fly a Chinook. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Really cool. Man, I've enjoyed. I mean, that story was just. I was focused in. I see why they've written books and interviews and all these things because that was absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're still joyful and like
still another day at
you
the
can
office.
laugh and you.
Well, what else you gonna do? Get angry?
No, yeah, I
Keep
just
on keeping on.
Yeah,
That's it. Just
that's great, and it's inspiring, absolutely inspiring.
yeah. Well, and that's one thing that we've sought to do with this podcast is inspire people. And myself and Eric have a first responder background as law enforcement officers, but we wanted to expand that beyond law enforcement or even first responder community to the military community. Even further than that, nobody has to. Men don't have to be part of a first responder or military community to be a leader. Or to have skills that are important to society or their families or their communities, either one. We just want to make sure we inspire people to be the very best that they can be and to have faith, to look to God, because every answer you actually need is in Jesus Christ. Any answer to any problem, every answer to every problem is in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that's the message that we want to push here on this podcast every day. So, Terry, what about, just real quick, one leadership lesson that you learned from your time in the military? What would be one?
Leadership lessons.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them, good and bad, for and against. I mean, I'm sure you've had, we had Pete Markow on here a couple of weeks ago, and Pete was talking about, bad examples of leadership and good examples of leadership, and you get those in. It doesn't matter if you're in military. It doesn't matter if you're in military, if you're in law enforcement, or you're in the corporate world. You've got good and bad examples of leadership.
Most of those good leaders are those that allow that person or that lower echelon person to accomplish, develop, and build upon the task that they were given. If you start to meddle and get into that person or what you hired that person to do, if you're hiring a person to run a thing, or if you're working for somebody or whatever, if you're getting into their business, then you probably shouldn't have hired them.
Right.
One. And two, you're probably reducing their ability to perform. And the military has kind of gotten into the notice now with some of its tools of wanting to armchair quarterback instead of allowing that lowest echelon individual to run and do what they need to do versus that armchair quarterback or that colonel sitting back in his office or back at the talk telling young lieutenant, captain, team leader, squad leader, whoever, what to do, instead of allowing them to develop it and report back and say, hey, because everybody wants to know in this modern day, I got to know it now. Can't let it develop.
Well, it's like I think I've mentioned it's in another podcast, but I think it was Dwight D. Eisenhower that said, don't tell someone how to do something. Tell them what you want done, and they'll amaze you with their ingenuity.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, as a leader, who wants to be a micromanager?
Pretty
I've never wanted to
sometimes.
be a micromanager. If I got to micromanage somebody, I don't need them. Like
Exactly.
you said,
Yeah,
you should have picked somebody else.
That was a good statement for sure.
Hire the right people and let them do their job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part of that goes back to their faith.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have any faith, so they have no ability to amaze you.
Yeah.
They have no discipline. They have no, I don't know.
Don't have anything to build upon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no reason.
Thomas, you got anything today? You learned anything today?
Man, I learned a lot.
You learned some acronyms.
I did. I definitely learned some acronyms because, you know, being around military and law enforcement and stuff, you hear some acronyms, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I definitely learned a lot, and I learned some history even, which is great. And I think our viewers did too, and our listeners learn a lot. And I really want to go find that documentary and the book and everything and read all about that, man. That was just incredible.
You can pull it up on YouTube.
Yeah, okay.
It's got the interview with Chad Baldwins and Dan Kostrepski and Mike DeGroff and Jim Weatherford
And those were all the guys that were there with you?
and Rob Gardner.
Gotcha. Okay. Absolutely.
Just look up ODA 525.
ODA 525. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Operational Detachment Alpha, right?
I
Gives you
will
another
get it.
acronym, yeah.
Hey, look, I'm going to be all up on the terms. I'm going to know exactly what's going on.
No, you won't. Case in point, we were talking when I went to regiment. So we got taught, because it was in the initial build out or initial turnover to the Army. So we got initial training from Boeing engineers. If that guy used any word other than and, but, and or, I had no clue what he was talking about.
Wow.
And the military is creating new acronyms every day, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, and, you know, I think why do they use so many acronyms?
Because most of the words are so long.
Okay.
like EGI, Embedded Global Position, Inertial Navigation System.
Oh
So
my.
why say that mouthful when I can say EGI?
EGI, yeah. It gets the job done. It's short, succinct. But yeah, I have absolutely loved listening to your stories and hearing all this. It's been phenomenal for sure.
Yeah. So, Thomas, you want to close us out in a word of prayer today?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you.
God, I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk together, Father, as men, and to help other men grow in their leadership capabilities in order to be able to be better fathers, leaders, husbands in their communities. Lord, I just pray that you use this episode to inspire others and to ultimately, like I said, inspire them to become better fathers, husbands, leaders, and community leaders. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to do this. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I want to thank everybody for listening, and you can pick us up on Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere that podcast exists pretty much, and we're on YouTube now too.
Yeah,
So-
we are.
so
We are
YouTube.
officially on
So,
YouTube.
and check out our Facebook and Instagram pages also.
Yeah, and Terry, do you have like any kind of like following or anything that you want to direct people to or anything like that?
Go follow God.
There you go. All right. Sounds good to me.
So hey, I'm back.
Oh.
It didn't take as long as I thought. So.
Well, we're done now.
Yeah, we
We've
just
already had
prayed.
our prayed and everything. So,
Well, hey, everybody, I'm back. So bye.
so
That's good.